right. Good evening, everybody. Oh, you know what? Hopefully I did not check my microphone before I got on. Hopefully, sometimes it gets kind of loud. I don't know. It resets itself every time. Hopefully this is okay and that everybody can hear me. So I'm Kim Snyder with the API guys. Thanks for joining me. For some of you, it's this evening. For some of you, it's this afternoon. And for some of you, it's already tomorrow morning. Those of you in Australia and New Zealand. So thanks very much for being here. This is the API Guys Mastermind, and today's topic is dead simple GoToWebinar integration. Now, for those of you who have never been on one of our Mastermind calls, just to let you know, kind of the lay of the land, it is a Mastermind call. Some people I think are so used to webinars where they're being sold something, and understandably, we use those too. There's nothing wrong with them, but in this case, a mastermind is a mastermind. What we're doing in these webinars is really exploring what are the what can we really make Infusionsoft do when we put together the API and some of the external applications and systems out there in the world, and a little creativity and a little elbow grease. What can we make this baby really do? Sometimes they are projects that we've done for clients. Sometimes they are projects we've done for ourselves. Sometimes they are simple enough to use, if I can use that word, that we can actually just give you the code. Sometimes that's just not possible because there's way too many moving parts. But this one today, GoToWebinar integration, is one of those where we actually will put the code up on our website for those of you who want to use it as a learning tool or a starting point for your own integration. You are welcome to use that however you wish. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. There is, by the way, I'm guessing that you guys have all done plenty of webinars. You know that there's a question and answer box in your control panel of GoToWebinar. If you want to post your questions there, then I will get to those either as we go along or at the end. And I'm happy to take any questions about the API of Infusionsoft or anything else that I can answer for you. So with that all said and done, let's get rid of this guy here, and let's start talking about a dead simple GoToWebinar integration. Now, the issue, let's use this one here, is really this. Two different scenarios here. The first one is that let's make this a little bigger actually, so you guys can see that a little bit better, right? The scenario is, or the use case is, that you want to register people for a GoToWebinar. But I don't know about you, but I hate using that GoToWebinar form because it's ugly and they don't give me any sort of really control over it other than throwing my logo up. And if you are into conversion at all, you know that you take a big conversion hit when you use their form over one that has had a little bit more thought put into it and is a little bit more visually pleasing and potentially asks for fewer fields, those sorts of things. So there is definitely, first of all, there's a branding problem. Secondly, there's a conversion problem. Thirdly, you're taking them away from your website, which you don't necessarily want to do. So for many reasons, you might not want to use GoToWebinar's registration form. Another scenario which presented itself last week, I did a webinar with Lisa McQueen, a fellow Infusionsoft certified consultant and the winner of the Icon 14 award this year. And she was, we put together for her an automated contract process that she wanted to share with the community and give away the code. So we did a webinar on that last Tuesday. And that scenario was interesting because Lisa actually set up the webinar on her GoToWebinar account and was promoting it to all of her people. And I wanted, of course, to promote it to my list as well. And capture those leads. I wanted to know who, I didn't want all those leads going over to her page and then into her GoToWebinar account. And then, not that she wouldn't have given them to me, but it's just easier if they went right into my Infusionsoft app, right? And plus, if they don't know that you're doing a co-promotion and they hit somebody else's page that has different branding than yours, it can be confusing and you lose them. And again, it's a conversion problem. So those are all the reasons why you again might want to use not use the standard GoToWebinar form. Okay, so the solution is actually so much simpler than I thought it was. Now, of course, there are alternate solutions. There are services out there right now today in the marketplace which will do an GoToWebinar integration for you for a monthly fee, but I had a prospect come to me last week. She said, you know what? You start out, you pay $20 here and $50 here and $100 here, and it does not seem like that much. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you wake up and you got $500 a month in fees. And for this one, I got to tell you, there's just no reason to pay a fee because it was just so much easier than I thought when we initially started to look at this thing. So what we're going to do is we are going to use the GoToWebinar API to manage both the registration and the attendance process, just using, and the way we're going to access that is with very simple HTTP posts right from within Campaign Builder. Although it doesn't have to be Campaign Builder, there are, as you may know, many places you can post from, both within Infusionsoft and from outside of Infusionsoft. So anywhere that you can create a post and get the proper information going over to GoToWebinar, you can actually use this. Barbara, thanks for the reminder. I am recording this. People who are on my webinars often know that every once in a while I will get halfway through the darn thing and realize that I have not hit the record button, but I am recording this one, thank goodness. And hopefully I have also hit the slide where you can show my screen. I've done that one too, 20 minutes through, and I'm not looking at the questions and everyone goes, hey, I can't see your screen. So hopefully I don't have that problem either. So the ingredients that we're going to need, we call these basically, I think of them as like recipes. And so the ingredients that you are going to need in order to be able to do this are really actually pretty straightforward. So the first one is obviously you've got to have a GoToWebinar account. That is the account that we're going to be registering your webinar attendees in. Number two is you are going to need a GoToWebinar developer account. Now, if I click on that, we'll just open it in a new link here. I've taken you here to their registration page. It's actually pretty simple. You just put in your name and your username and open an account. And once you do that, what it does is it gives you the ability to create, quote, an app. And you can call that whatever you want, and the instructions will take you through this and how to do it all. But you create a little app, which really is nothing more than just a request for an API key, and it gives you one. So that's the next thing that you need is a GoToWebinar API key. Now, in Infusionsoft, that API key is currently a very long string of letters and numbers. And it's just a single string. In GoToWebinar, you will actually get two different ones. One's called a secret key, and the other is called, I forget what, a consumer string or something, consumer secret, something like that. Anyway, but there'll be two of them, right? And it'll be pretty obvious what you do with them. And those together make up what we are calling your API key. So you need that. GoToWebinar will give you that. And then finally, you will need to download what we've created. It's a class library for GoToWebinar, which means it's just some code that we've created that creates sort of a wrapper around their API that makes it really easy to reference the various functions within their API. when I say you, I mean the proverbial you. Someone doesn't have to have one of these wrappers, just in the same way that you don't necessarily have to have an Infusionsoft SDK to work with. You can go straight into the API, but it's just, if it's something you're going to do a lot, it's just cleaner to write some of these things as sort of helpers to just make it faster and easier every time that you want to do this. So we've created a class library that you would need to install on your server to make the code run. And that's really it. I mentioned here that, if you were going to do this yourself, the things that you would need, besides these 4 things, is just the ability to navigate around in your server and using FTP, and to just modify some files, very minor modifications, mainly configuration files where you're putting in API keys, and also just setting the paths to certain files, because they'll be different on your server than they are on mine. But other than that, there's no code that you have to touch. It's all in these libraries. And if you hadn't already installed the Infusionsoft SDK, which is how we talk to Infusionsoft with the API, then you would have to do that first. You could just follow the directions that we have in our missing guide to setting up the Infusionsoft API. So that's it. What I'm about to show you, this is really all you need to make this work. And again, we are not talking about any any coding here, or any, like I said in my email, a lot of people, that last one I did with Lisa about the automated contracts, I suspect from some of the comments that some people got halfway through that and their eyes rolled back in their head and their hair lit on fire. They went running, screaming from the room. It was a little hairy, I admit, but that's what it took to get the job done. Fortunately, this one is not like that at all. This one is, if you wanted to implement in your app, this one is really easy. That's why I called it dead simple GoToWebinar integration. So let me show you this, and I'll show you what this is going to look like, because I am thankfully not yet upgraded to R30 yet. In Infusionsoft, I have to still use Firefox over here. So this is a campaign. In fact, this is the campaign that you are in right now. If you are here on this webinar, we used this campaign to register you using the very process that I'm going to suggest to you. So let's go over here to the Edit tab, and we can take a look at this and just how this all runs, and we can hopefully make this kind of big. So this is the entire registration sequence. Not only is it registration, but it's also the registration and attendance sequence. So it starts out with a form. Now, in my case, what I do is, well, you all know it, because you signed up, right? So if I go here to Mastermind, and again, I open that in a different link. So I have used, in this case, this is lead pages. And when you click on this and you put in, you can see I always use my dogs for test accounts. LC Dog signed up for this, hits reserve my seat. So this is just tied to that form right there, is in fact tied to this form right here in Infusionsoft. This is a unstyled form here that has the same information on it, and that is how we start the process when you sign up using that Mastermind registration page. So then when we get into this first little sequence here, what we're going to do is, first I start out by removing I've got 2 attendance tags, did attend and did not attend. Later we add more specific ones, like 522 did attend, 522 did not attend. But to begin with, we use those, and so because I'm going to be using them later on, many of you come back to all of our webinars over and over again, and so we need to remove them first so that we can apply them later. But here's the meat of the issue right here. So first one is register GoToWebinar. Okay, and if we look at this HTC post, you'll see this is all there is to it, because again, all of the heavy lifting is done in the background in those code libraries that we've created. So all it is a wherever you have, this is a script that you would put on your site that we wrote, and called registration. And it's a little script too, by the way. I mean, by most standards, I won't bore you with the detail, but this again, you just be downloading these. So this is it. There's this is the script that registers you, and you don't have to do any modification of it at all because we've already done that. But it's calling that script sitting on your server, right? And it's passing it two values. The first value it's going to pass is obviously the contact ID, because it's got to know who to register. And then this one, which is the webinar ID. Now, how do you get the webinar ID? Well, you guys have all seen these webinar IDs because they're in the join links and all the links that you're sent. So you get that webinar ID, and you pass the contact ID. And when that when you hit that post, it goes out, it finds that webinar in GoToWebinar, and it registers that person. So that's it. They are done. Now, what they're going to get as a result of that is up to you. When you set up the webinar in GoToWebinar, if you said to send them a registration, well, you definitely want to. We don't have to, but never mind. I take that back. You don't have to send them anything through GoToWebinar if you don't want to. You don't have to send them the confirmation email. You don't have to send them the reminder emails. You don't have to send them the follow-up emails, because we're gonna grab all of that information that we need back in order to send that out to them. So this gets them registered, and then these set custom fields is so that we can do just that. So this is really so that we can handle the any emails that come after it. So there is a second little script, again, that sits in the same place on your server, okay, called Mastermind. In my case, Mastermind set custom fields. And these are the things that I am setting. So these are custom fields within my Infusionsoft app. Contact ID, obviously I have to pass, but then what I've done here is, because this is just so easy, is just hard coded these values. Your webinar time, 6 o'clock p.m. EDT. Your date, this is what we call a pretty date, Thursday, May 22nd. Now, I have scripts that will make these pretty dates. I have scripts that will go and find the date and the time. But why? When you're just setting up a single webinar, the easiest way to do it is, what these things are. Just, stick them in here, and then it will write these to the custom field that you've indicated. Now, interestingly, the way that I do this and the way I have this set up is that this is the name of my custom field. This is the database name of each one of my custom fields. And normally you would have a dash in front of it, but I've left that off for readability because it knows that. But anyway, that's how I set this up. To get the right information in the custom fields so that I can send you emails, right? And then I'm going to apply some tags, which are unique to me. You can do whatever you want with yours. But in that first sequence, that's it, okay? I got you registered, and I wrote some information about this to the custom fields. Now, just so that you know, the URL that you need to join this was actually written back to a custom field as well as part of the registration script. So I have that also. So then what I'm going to do is, there's a little decision diamond here. This is what we call a railroad siding. It just, in case, because I need, before these emails go out, I need that, you all probably do this too. I need that join URL and some other information to be in there. So I want to make sure that it is before I let it go through and hit this email right here, which is my confirmation email. So this confirmation email that you got is just all it's doing now is merging in, you know, those fields, the values in those fields, including, which is, this is the one I wanted to point out, this webinar join URL, which came back from um, GoToWebinar when we sent the post to register you. So that all comes back, it all gets written, it all gets merged in. You can use these however you see fit. You can send reminders and so on and so forth, which I did not. Probably should have, but I did not. So then now I've got another script, and this is not, you know, I probably would not put this in the instructions, because this is more for me, but I'll just tell you what it does in case you're interested. So what I do here, you can see what I'm passing to this script is the contact ID and the event date. And specifically, it's just, I'm using that merge field that has your webinar date in it. It's a date time field. And what I do in this script, Mastermind event registration tags, you can just forget the code, you guys, but you can just look at the look in the comments. What we do is we look to see, I set a tag that, yeah, this is probably more confusing. I don't want to show you this. Forget that. Let me show you in the app. Actually, this would probably be much less confusing. On all of my events, the way that oops, not that either. Okay, there. So you can see for all my events, I always have three. I have three tag categories: event registered, event not attended, and event registered. And they always take this basic format. They have the date 2014-05-13, API Mastermind, or what have you. And so I don't, you know, I don't want to set these. There's no reason for me to set these up by hand, because they always take the same format, right? So generally what I do is I have a script that I run when people register for my webinars. And what I do is, before I apply that tag, I first check to see if it exists. I query the table that holds the tags, and I say, because I know the date, right? And I know what category it's going to be in, event registered or what have you. So I say, if I look in, you know, in this category, is there a tag that begins with 2014-05-13, blah, blah, blah? And if the answer is no, then I create that tag programmatically and then apply it. If it so that only runs once, because once it's created, it's created. After that, it says, oh yeah, that tag's already there. That's tag 1533. Let's apply that. So this is just a little shortcut thing that I do, so that I don't have to create all these tags every time, because I do a lot of these events. So I generally run that little script all the time, just changing the names of the tags that I'm trying to create. So, but that's what that is doing. That post right there, set specific date tag, means rather than just saying attended or did not attend, what event did you attend or did not attend or register for? So that creates that and sets it. And then after that, now we're sitting here and we're just waiting with this field timer. Now, you know, again, the beauty of doing it this way, this is kind of one of the eternal frustrations. We work in our practice with clients, we work with a large number of requests to work with custom fields and dates, because people are always wanting to put things in those custom fields so that they can use them as merges in their emails, but also so that they can use them with field timers, right? So I have a field timer because I wrote this date. One of the formats that I wrote this, if you go back and look, is we wrote this, nope, sorry, wrong one. We wrote this here, not only as like a date time, but also as a date only. And nope, sorry, date time. So because I know that, that's not right. Where is my, your webinar date, your webinar time. Oh, I must be setting that programmatically. All right. Well, it's got a date field that we can use here that is showing up. I thought I was like setting it by hand, but I guess I'm not. Anyway, but that is what is driving next webinar date. There we go. That is what is driving the field timer here. So what it's doing is it's sitting here waiting to 8 o'clock, because by 8 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to be done with this webinar, right? And so at 8 o'clock, it is going to then run this post, which is going to, same thing. It's just going to go check the attendance on this for each person, and it's going to apply a tag. 1313 is that did attend. 1315 was that did not attend tag that I took out at the beginning. And so it's going to tag that, which I then use to set more specific tags. But this is it. It's going to go now. This is a script, right? Tag attendance, one of those that you get, that runs, and that's what it does. It says, okay, here's the webinar ID. Let's go see who showed up, and let's whatever tag IDs you stick in here, we will apply that based on who showed up and who did not show up, and that's, for me, that's it. Now, finish, there's a tag here that says when either one of those attendance tags get applied, the campaign is done. I specifically take them out because I want you to be able to come back in, right, when you sign up for the next webinar, and to be able to reuse this campaign. I actually, I don't have to have this here, but to me, I like closure, so I like it to say, okay, this goal's been satisfied, so the campaign is over. Now, obviously, what I could do is I could go far beyond this, right? And I could start to branch out and say, thank you for attending. Here's the here's the webinar archive, etc., and so on. Throw you into a long-term nurture campaign, whatever I want to do off of the end of this. I also could have here, added in here some using the field timers. I could have used delay timers and or field timers. We could have sent out reminders, which I didn't do. But that's all Infusionsoft stuff, and that's all predicated on getting you registered and the dates and times in there correctly, and then down here figuring out whether you attended or not. And so, like, that's it. I mean, like, look at this, you guys. This is like the world's simplest sequence. Now, I know it's like simple in Infusionsoft. It's not so simple on the back end. But in this case, we've actually done that work for you. And as integrations go, compared to things that we've been asked to do by clients, this one is really very, very, very straightforward. So there's a couple points that I want to make here before I take any questions that you might have. And I guess the point that the big point that I always like to make is I think the API is kind of scary to a lot of people. It's like one of those things that you hear about and it's out there, but you don't really know what it can do. You have no idea. You don't have time to learn it. You don't, it's code. It's, and my big, if those of you who are at InfusionCon, Simon Sinek talked about why, and what's your why? Well, here, our why is that, we wouldn't have become Infusionsoft certified consultants if we did not believe in Infusionsoft and the power of Infusionsoft, as Infusionsoft itself reminds us all the time, to help small businesses succeed. We really, really believe that. But I have to say that I also really, really believe that you cannot experience the full power of Infusionsoft to improve your business and your life without the API. You just can't. The full promise of Infusionsoft is locked away without the API. Because even, then when Infusionsoft took that right turn and said, we're going to make this easy, they mindfully said, and it's okay, that's a business decision, I get it, but they mindfully said, okay, but there's a big chunk of functionality now that we're going to kind of ignore. And if it doesn't do it out of the box, we're just not going to address it, except that we're going to create this marketplace and let our marketplace ecosystem address it. And I believe that you cannot possibly do all the things that you really want and need to do with Infusionsoft to get the full benefit of it without the API. And therefore, somebody needs to show people what all can be done with the API, and that it's not scary and it's not that hard, and that it doesn't have to cost $30,000, every time you talk to a developer. There's all these kind of helper functions out there that can be created. And and you can either learn it yourself, which is what I did. For those of you who don't know me, I taught this to myself about a year or so ago out of self-defense without ever knowing anything about code, because I needed to. Or you can have someone, you can take what we've done and modify it if you're bent that way, or you can actually hire someone to get these things done for you. But the other thing I like to say to people is, um, this is a classic example to me of a principle that, in working with this, that I've discovered, which is Infusionsoft also focuses very much on the front end, on the funnel, and in automating the funnel, and trying to get new leads and convert those leads and turn them into customers and all that sort of stuff. And that's their big thing, right? Sales and marketing automation. And I get that too, because it's sexy and it makes good copy, right? But the truth of the matter is, in my experience, any money that you spend, and any time, I'm not saying don't do it, by the way, but any time and money that you spend on automating your funnel is 100% speculative, meaning you are hoping that you get additional leads, additional customers out of that investment in time and or money. Hope. And to me, hope's not a great strategy. So what I think is a way better strategy with a much more certain return on investment, albeit much less sexy from an advertising and marketing standpoint, is that instead you go look at automating your back end processes first, and that you specifically find pain points in your back end process. For me, this is a pain point. I do at least 2 webinars a week usually, right? And setting up these darn webinars and keeping up with them, and like, this is a huge pain point for me. Anytime you're entering things or doing something over and over and over again, that's a pain point, right? Well, if you automate these back end processes, and the point of these masterminds is to show you that they are in fact automatable, right? And then not and easier than you think. They all can be automated. It just takes a little creativity and a little knowledge, right? You automate these things. Guess what? How much time do you think I spent on these every week doing these things? Right? To begin, it's like a couple hours that of my time, which is really valuable time, but even if it's not mine, it's somebody's, that can now be used way more effectively and efficiently. So yep, I spent whatever to develop this the first time. But for the rest of my life, I don't have to mess with this automation piece. I can let Infusionsoft handle it. And I promise you, if you go look in your back end, there are hundreds of pain points probably in your back end business processes that you can automate in this way, right? In these small little discrete steps that have a certain ROI. You can look at them in advance and say, this is going to save me X dollars in manpower, in lost customers, in customer service, in whatever, and I can get this sort of a return on that investment. Does that investment make sense or no? If it does, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't, I'm not. And you cannot say that about an investment in automating your sales and marketing funnel. Again, not saying that you don't do that, but one of the things I like to think about is, all right, well, let's automate our back end processes. Let's save some amount of money, and then let's take that money and time that we've saved, and then invest that in those front end processes, those sales and marketing processes, so that if they fail, I haven't lost anything. I'm kind of only at break even. But if they succeed, Anyway, that's my way of looking at it. But basically, I don't know if you can tell. I just, to me, the API is magic. I said to one of my programmers today, like he was doing something, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to rule the world. I just, it's, you can do so many things with it. So, and that's beyond the code. That's really the message I want you guys to get out of these masterminds. If you can dream it, someone can do it. We can do it. Someone can do it. Find someone who can help you to do these things or learn these things. All right. So let me take some questions here. Any questions that you have either about this GoToWebinar, little integration. It's funny to call it an integration because it's so tiny, but anyway, it is, in fact, an integration between Infusionsoft and GoToWebinar. So any questions you have about this or the API in general or anything, actually, I'd be happy to answer. So Scott says, if you have two HTTP posts in a row, how does the timing work? How do you know if the previous post completed before the next one starts? Well, actually, Scott, you don't. And that's why sometimes I have have different things like railroad sidings, and or delays and so on and so forth. Because honestly, now, right here, the truth of the matter is that this registration, so this custom field right here, isn't in this case is not dependent on something coming before it. It's not dependent on any information that is returned from this registration process. So in this case, it doesn't actually matter. But the truth of the matter is, let's just say that even though these things happen usually in microseconds, milliseconds, I guess is the right word. Especially since this is going out to GoToWebinar and this is staying internal, you don't know, you have no idea because they are going to fire again what is to us effectively simultaneously, milliseconds apart. And if this one just takes a little bit slower to complete than this one, and this one depends on this one, then you definitely have to take that into account. You've got to either put a delay timer in between these two, if there's a dependency here, or I hate the fact that we only have that the smallest increment is 15 minutes in the delay timer, because I don't need 15 minutes. I need like 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. So I actually have some scripts that I use that are I call it rolling your own delay timer, that I can put in here, and the script basically delays until the process and then completes, after 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. Or what you do is, you would, sometimes I'll do things to give it, like a little more time. Like I might rearrange these and put the apply the tag, in between these two, just again, because this is all happening really split second. But anyway, the answer is it does, it doesn't. These run almost simultaneously. So if you want to ensure that it has had time to run, you've got to do something to make sure that it has, whether, one of those things. And it's always good practice to do something like this. Like this is what in coding, we have something called error handling, right? Where you say, okay, well, if this doesn't happen if this isn't there, if this field doesn't have a value, if the value is not an integer and I need it to be an integer, what are we going to do if that happens, if we get this error? How do we allow it to die gracefully? It's called error handling. And so these, to me, this railroad siding concept, for example, is like the Infusionsoft campaign builder version of error handling. You say, all right, well, what happens if that script doesn't complete before my email goes out? Well, that would be bad. So let's check and see if it's completed, and then stick it in a railroad siding for 15 minutes and then send the confirmation email. But if it has completed, let it go. Things like that, you definitely do need to be aware of when you're building these campaigns. But great question. Hopefully I answered it. Okay, let's see. Alyssa, it is recorded. So barring any technical difficulties, I will be posting the recording on our website here probably within the next day or so. So no worries there. All right. Any other questions about this? And while we're kind of hanging out waiting on questions, let me just ask you guys a question on my how many. I mean, I assume that you must use GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar, or you probably wouldn't be here, right? If you would just throw in the answer section what your interest was in this, or in the question, sorry, in the question box. What was your interest in this topic? Is it that you do webinars and you hate setting them up? Is it a branding issue? Is it a conversion issue? Is it just, hey, I had nothing to do on a Thursday night and I thought I'd stop by? Just give me a sense so that I can number one, kind of tailor the when I put the instructions up on the website. So give me a sense of where your interest lies, and then secondly, if you wouldn't mind, tell me a little. Tell me, like, do you see yourself ever sitting down? If I give you all the instructions about how to set this up, do you actually see yourself sitting down and trying to set this up on your own server, or is it more just I want to know what's possible? Are you a do-it-yourselfer, or are you already a coder? What are your aspirations, or how do you see yourself using these things? Okay, I've got so far a little bit of everything. A few people have said, I just kind of want to know what's possible. I've got a couple people that have said, yep, I really want to try to set this up on my own. Cool. Excellent. Kay, love you for that. Kay's going to set it up today. Bunch of good. Yeah, a bunch of do-it-yourselfers are looking to get back in. Now, and then interesting, I've also seen two people who have said they want to avoid the registration process of GoToWebinar, which is admitted, like, what, I've been using GoToWebinar, like, I don't know, and since they first came out, I think for well over 10 years, maybe longer than that. And I swear to you, I do not think that registration page has changed in like 10 years. You would think like they would do something about that, but they haven't. So a lot of people saying that. Of all the things that, let me just say this, for those of you who are saying, I'm getting a bunch of do-it-yourselfers, I really want to start learning how to do this API stuff. For those of you who are thinking about this, I would say, like, if you want a project to cut your teeth on, but also one that's going to be useful to you, like not just, printing hello world on a page, but actually something that you can use in your business. I think this is a good one. And the reason is, yeah, there's a lot of functionality in here, but you don't really have to touch that functionality. It's kind of a good confidence builder. All you got to do is go modify, put the right files in the right place, make sure the paths are right, set up the SDK, and modify some configurations and so on and so forth, and you'll actually get a big bang for your buck. And if you were using one of the marketplace services, you could cancel that, and use this instead. So I think that's actually this is a good one to start with. I'm just reading some more of these comments. Yeah, and a couple of people are, I mean, this is really high level what I went through here. I would not expect you to be able to set up anything based on maybe the campaign, based on what I've done here. But if you've looked at the instructions that we write, well, actually, most of you probably haven't really seen any of our instructions yet, because we've been keeping those pretty close to the vest, other than the one that we wrote last week for the automated contracts. But I will, let's see if I can find one of those for you, just so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Yeah, so this is the instructions that we did for last week's. automated contract. This one was the really hairy one, right? But with the video. But what you can see actually is that these are written like really step by step by step with automated animations that will kind of show you what we're suggesting and the code and do this, put this here. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying we try to be as thorough and complete in these instructions as we can. So hopefully, if we do our job correctly on this one, you will be able to set this up on your own, but not necessarily from what I gave you here. This was more of a high level. Okay, well, I see a lot of good comments, so I appreciate all those. It really helps me to know why you're here. That way I can sort of know how to talk to these subjects. Um, and But if you guys don't have any other questions about this, then we'll go ahead and close up shop for the night. I do appreciate that you all have been, taking time out of your Thursday to or Friday morning, as the case may be, to be here. And if I can ever help you with anything, please let me know. This is my favorite topic, and I'm I'm happy to help if I can. I'm generally, I try I'm on the forums quite a lot and on Facebook in the API, Infusionsoft API Learners group. For those of you, hopefully everyone's already a member of that. And so give this a go if that's what you're into, setting it up. If you run into any snags, jump on the Facebook group and ask for help, and we'll all try to help you. And we'll see you on the next webinar next week, which, by the way, the next webinar was, what was I going to do on Thursday? I had like the coolest topic for next Thursday. Heck, I can't remember, but fortunately I wrote it down. So, I will I will have a cool topic for you next Thursday. So be sure and come back to the sign up page and get that and get registered for that one next week as well. We'll see you all then. All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.